Welcome to another episode of What to Say and How to Say It. I'm Nina Roesner, and I'm here with our favorite licensed professional counselor, Kyle Hargrove. We're going to be digging in today to a topic that may or may not be on your landscape as something important, but it's how your values increase respect in marriage, and specifically shared values. Because you probably have some values and they may not be shared, and that may be causing you some problems. So, we're going to take a look at that today. In the meantime, if you want to check out our website, greaterimpact.org, be sure to go over there and take our marriage assessment. And if you're interested in meeting with Kyle, we'll get you that information towards the end of the episode today. So, Kyle, shared values. It's a thing.
It's not just a thing, it's a big thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things that it can be astounding to talk with couples who have been together for years, even decades, and have never had a meaningful conversation about values. And I think not only is that a conversation that should be held numerous times before a couple decides to be permanent, it's probably one of the greater contributing factors to a lack of respect in a household or in a couple because those conversations haven't occurred.
Mm-hmm.
We can glean some things from the person that we're with, married to, about their values based on their behaviors and the things that they are consistent with. But there are some things that we're going to just continue to be guessing about. And we may guess wrong. We may be making our guess or our presumption based on a one-off scenario where one or the other of us just had a bad day. But maybe that's not a situation that occurs frequently, so we haven't seen ourselves in action consistently. So conversations about our personal values and the things we've grown up with and the things we want to dream about for the future, where our families are concerned, I think are hugely critical to the success and the duration and the longevity of marriages.
Well, and I think we see these things play out in small moments. I had a client, she's been married about 3 years, and she and her husband have different views on, well, not anymore, but they had different views on how evening is supposed to go. Yeah. And it was tied to a value of hierarchy in marriage that she didn't even know he aligned with. But what happened is a very small moment. He was consistently grumpy when she would get home from work after him, and she commuted, right? So she and he are working full-time jobs. She's got to leave before him and she gets home after him because they end at the same time. Yeah, you know where I'm going with this.
Let's see what's coming here.
Yeah, dinner not on the table, sister, and so he's grumpy about dinner. And then she had the conversation with him because she didn't understand his grumpiness. And she had 400 other things and she wasn't, and I'm like, so have you asked him what he longs for at the end of the day? She's like, well, no. I said, well, start there, see what happens. So she goes and she's like, so what is it? If you could have anything you wanted at the end of the day, what would it be? And he goes, well, I'd come home from work and dinner would be on the table. And she was astonished. She's like, well, why is that? And he said, well, that's what my mom did for my dad. And I remember that too in my own marriage, us having to navigate the simple things. But I think a lot of conflict comes from a difference in values, right? And unless you have those conversations, to your point, we're fighting about a lot of stuff that isn't the stuff. You're having conversations that don't change anything because you're not talking about the real issue at hand.
Yeah. And not only, are there values differently, that situation ends up in someone not feeling valued.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, both of them.
Right. Yeah. If
He's
you
not
love me,
feeling
you
valued
would.
because she's not treating him as his mother treated her father, and she's not feeling valued because she's doing all she can. And to this point, time travel isn't a thing.
Right.
being two places at once isn't a thing.
Yeah.
And that's real logical when you and I hear someone talk about that, or we hear a story and we're going to ourselves, we're saying to ourselves, seriously?
Yeah.
You're gonna bring this into the mix, something that's physiologically impossible and or physically impossible, whatever the right word is. I
Oh,
think you get the
physics.
point.
It's yeah, same. Right. Yeah.
We can only be in one place at one time.
Hmm.
So, so it's there are a lot of assumptions I think that come in through just the beginning of a relationship. We shouldn't, especially in the diverse culture that we live in right now. And I'm not talking about the color of anybody's skin. I'm just talking about different ideas about what a traditional relationship looks like, if there is
Hmm.
even such thing
Hmm.
as a traditional relationship in 2025,
Yeah.
in the minds of most people. But I have had a client who was struggling in the marriage because of ideas her husband had about fidelity. And to hear someone say, I just presumed 8 years ago,
Ooh.
I just presumed that fidelity was something he valued in our relationship.
Hmm.
And
Oof.
apparently it's not.
Yeah. Ouch.
And, so what do you do with that?
Hmm.
Because that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. To your point, like you think you don't need to talk about this. And I've got a couple that has they're Christian people, have always been, okay? And yet he's been operating with an open marriage, and that was news to her. Um and she's kind of like, wait, what? How? So you make assumptions when somebody says, hey, I follow Jesus. It's like, okay, check that box. And it's like, no, let's have some really specific conversations about
Right.
that and what that means. So this is kind of evolving into a pre-married versus a what to do now, but we can probably talk about both of them, because I think you're going to find that in both those contexts.
Well, maybe it's a pre-married and a stay married,
Yeah, amen.
you
Right.
know, because just, in the little bit of time that since we decided what we were going to talk about today, I'm just scrambling in my brain to say what are important types of values
Mm.
to a couple in
Mhm.
a relationship. When somebody says, we're gonna be permanent and we're gonna live in the same house and have the same name and do the things. What are the values that we should be discussing before that? And just a few of the ones that came to my pea-sized brain were spiritual values, financial values, family values, career values, parenting values, the values we have around conflict resolution and, traditions. Well, that's one that hits hard early,
Yeah.
especially if it hasn't been discussed. And then, values around trust and commitment. And so that's a handful. I am sure that there are a dozen more if we wanted to spend 30 minutes just, applying our brains vividly, which I do as infrequently as possible because it makes my head hurt. I think they call that thinking. But it would be interesting to me, as a matter of fact, would you mind if we asked our listeners about this? And I realize I'm throwing this on you at the last minute, but what if some of you contacted us to say, these are values that we think are critical, not just, hey, they may or may not be there, but the kind of, now that we look at things from 2020 in hindsight and say, how could we possibly have made it to the point we're at right now if we haven't been talking about these?
Hmm.
Somehow, a lot of us have,
Yeah.
by God's grace,
Yeah.
a lot of us have. And I'd like to throw in there as well. I think God's grace shows us very specifically the value he has for each and every one of us as an individual.
Hmm.
Because if he
Yeah.
didn't value us, he would have absolutely no reason to pardon us for the lifestyle and the mindset of sin that we all come
Hmm.
prepackaged with.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And I would like you get this every day as we're interacting with our customers and hearing their stories and what they're struggling with in their relationships. A lot of times it comes down to a values conflict, especially the stuff that cannot get resolved is a values conflict. Um, I think about my own situation where I don't, it's just by the grace of God we got married. Because I wasn't a Christian. Oops. And then I had completely different views of family, had no intentions of having kids, and he wanted a bunch of them, right? I mean, it's astonishing. We've been married over 30 years. I think it's 34 years this summer. And yet we've navigated all that. And by the way, we did end up with 3 kids and I wanted all of them. So there's that. But what got me thinking about this was one of my clients, she got pregnant and they have other children. And he's like, no, abort it. I don't want another child. And they're Christian. And
Huh.
she's upset, like they've been married a long time, like 2 decades, and they have other children. And now he's got a value shift for whatever reason. He says it's financial, but you just don't know. So when you talk about values, like you got to dig deeply with your partner about these topics. It's not, you don't want to have surface level conversation around this stuff because you have to really understand, well, what does it mean when you say you want kids? Like how many? Why do you
Yeah.
want kids?
Well, the proof is in the pudding to where our values lie. And what we value and believe is what we do.
Hmm.
The rest is just talk.
Yep.
So when you say, because I'm a Christian, I value the sanctity of life, but then it becomes inconvenient for you. And then you suddenly have a different perspective.
Hmm.
What we're going to say is maybe that was not your value to begin with, because when
Exactly.
rubber hits the road, it's not the choice that you want to make
Yeah.
or that you're choosing to make. So there's some questions that have to be answered in that scenario about,
Hmm.
what is truly your value in this situation, because if it is that, then it is that. And you don't go around saying, well, we're going to make an exception for me because this is not convenient right now.
Yeah.
And that's not just in the sanctity of life area. That's in everything. I'll tell you one of the ones where people get tripped up the most, and I'm constantly with clients on this one every day, and that's parenting.
Oh, yeah.
If
Yeah.
this is your value, or if these are your values, and I'll tell you what, it's I may or may not have experienced this myself, but uh, when two people get married and they're looking at each other with googly eyes, and all they can see is rainbows and unicorns and the wonderful life that lays ahead. And we talk about how we think children should be parented, and the other one says, oh, I agree. That's just wonderful. And then we do the thing and get the ring. And when we have children, suddenly the agreement in those values is something that's lost in the wind. Oh,
Hmm.
I don't remember saying that. Okay, back when we were googly eyed, everything was wonderful.
Hmm.
and sugary and sweet. Now that we're living real life with all of the stuff that comes with it, it's like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
No, that's not convenient for me. There's another client that I've worked with who is going into a first marriage with a young lady who has children. And they're already having situations that indicate their parenting values are not aligned, not even close. When one of you is closer to a drill sergeant and the other is closer to uh, free range parenting, let's just call it, there is a
Yeah.
lot of land in between. There's a lot of acreage
Yeah.
between those two places.
Yeah, for sure.
And and you know, it's hard sometimes to have to look someone in the eye and say, this will undo your marriage. This will undo that relationship.
Hmm.
There is, a litany of people, millions long or large or whatever a litany refers to, that will tell you not sharing the same parenting values can and very frequently will obliterate your marriage.
Yeah, it certainly causes conflict, and you're gonna have differences in that space just because men and women are so different. Men have this much higher tolerance for risk than women do. And for us, that was a huge thing because our boys did Boy Scouts. And I just, so my oldest was 11 and he's going to go to Boy Scout camp. And in my head, he's my baby, right? And I didn't want him to go to Boy Scout camp. And my husband's like, he needs to go to Boy Scout camp. And he was like, I need to go to Boy Scout camp. And I'm like, I don't want you to go to Boy Scout camp. He'd never been away from home really, other than, doing the slumber thing at a friend's or whatever. And I was just vehemently opposed. My mother radar was just like, this is the wrongest thing ever. And I knew he was going to be homesick. I knew it was going to be hard. And my husband finally, after 2 weeks of discussion around this, sat me down and he's like, look, you're not wrong. He is going to be homesick. He's going to cry his eyes out every single night. And this is, I don't expect you to get this, but this is a dude thing. This is a manhood step he needs to
Mm-hmm.
take. And if he doesn't take it, it's going to make him weak. And he is going to have a hard time. So I
Yeah.
hear you, but this is really good for him. And I'm like, oh, I need to pray about this. So I prayed about it. And I don't remember what verse it was, but it was something. And I was like, okay, fine. I'll agree with God. I wasn't going to agree with my husband or my son, but I'll agree with God. Fine. Go to Boy Scout camp. The kid comes back in a week and I asked him, how was it? He goes, Mom, it was awesome. And it was really hard. And I was so homesick. And, I was taking a shower the second day I was there and I came out of the shower to get my towel and somebody hung a cross necklace made out of nails on my towel. And there was nobody in there. Like, I don't even know how that happened. He said, but the best part was I led this kid, Chris, to Christ. He was more homesick than I was. And I prayed with him and he accepted Jesus as his savior. And then we hung out the rest of the time. And I have a new friend kind of thing. I'm like, oh my word, are you kidding me? Like I could have been in the way of somebody hearing.
Yeah.
All
And he
right.
probably
Yeah.
and he
Ooh.
probably came home from Boy Scout camp, busting out of his clothes with a mustache
Well,
and, became a man that week. He looked
no,
like
but he did
that.
start slicing fruit with a sword. So yeah. I mean, there's like, they're 29 and 26. They both eagled. My husband went on some of these trips. They sailed the Bahamas, nearly died. There was barracuda attacks. I don't understand some of what happened. I don't want to know. And that's the thing. I don't want to know. And I'm tough. I'm from Montana. Like I pulled a nail out of my dog's foot last week and did, you know, home care. Like I can handle animal things without a vet. I pulled a I won't tell you all the stuff I've done to my kids medically, but we don't need to go to the doctor. I'm not squeamish and we're all tough as nails. And I got to tell you, I still don't want to know what happened at Boy Scout camp. And
Yeah.
that's a values difference between me and my husband. He wants to tell me. They want me to know, and I'm like, I'm not having it. And it's all
Well,
fun. But
I hope your dog had a roadside warranty on that paw. Um,
yeah, it was astonishing. If you could have the perfect injury, yeah, it just went like, thank you, Jesus. It was zero issue for her. And I have a little boot. So she wore a boot and was bandaged, and we cleaned it and all the things and shaved it, whatever, like you do at a
yeah.
vet, because I've taken dogs to vet for puncture wounds
Yeah.
before. But
Well, it's
anyway,
probably amazing how many rites of passage don't happen when they should happen
exactly.
because we get in the way
Yeah.
in whatever way we might. And some of it's insecurity and some of it's control
Hmm.
or lack thereof.
Oh, I had
Um,
all that.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I
So,
valued my own comfort over my child's growth in that moment.
yeah.
And the Lord
Who's
kind of
that?
caught
Who's
me off
Boy
guard.
Scout camp about? Is it about you or is it about the Boy Scout?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I just didn't want to worry about it. And yep, I just prayed. And it was a great thing. The Lord used that to teach me that I'm gonna be wrong. So
Yeah.
don't trust my gut feelings all the time. Check with him. Because I hadn't up until that point.
So, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you think our values change as we grow and mature?
I think that as I know more about the Lord, as I look at my Christian journey, the more I've known him,
Mhm.
my values have definitely changed to become more Christ-like,
Yeah, because
for
it's
sure.
that situation that you just described to me that causes me to ask that question because initially you valued safety and
Hmm.
security above
Right.
anything else.
Yep.
And maybe because of that experience and others like it, now you value the the opportunity for a child to have experiences like that, even though, yes, there are boogers in the woods,
Yep.
that
Yep.
can bite and will do what they have to take care of themselves or to get food. Ooh.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are. But it was such an important experience in the development of your son
Hmm.
as as a young man.
Yeah. Well, and it made a leader out of him.
Yeah,
Like, he runs his own company now.
right.
Both those boys are rocking it. Yeah, they're doing great.
So that's the genesis for the question that just flew through my mind about. I wonder about, do our values change? I kind of think they do in some situations because it's not that the values we had were wrong or that they were bad. It's just that we may see and experience other things that are better
Yeah.
in a
As we
situation.
mature.
Yeah, because we'll stand on some stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I remember getting married and not really talking through what our Christmas traditions were like with our families until
Oh,
we started, 6 or 8 weeks before the thing. And it was like, so we'll need to figure out, a way to get down to my folks for Christmas Eve because that's what we do, and um, she says, well, if we're doing that, how are we going to be at my folks on Christmas morning, just mere hours later, while we're 5 hours apart? Well, we'll just have to see them when we see them. That didn't
oh,
that did not go over well,
oh, honey.
and
Yeah.
yeah, that I didn't say that again.
Yeah.
But we both had different traditions with our families that were generations old,
Hmm.
and there's nothing wrong with any of them, but they're not the same.
Right.
And you know, at a point, I kind of saw it coming at one point in our lives about well, uh, there'll be a place when we have children where Christmas is at our house, and if anybody wants to come, they can. And at first, I thought, man, that is going to be a fight. And then by the time it happened, it's like, I'm good. I'm good. That's so so tired,
Mhm.
that it. So I changed my mind about things that I thought were really important,
Yeah.
and they are important. But that idea of appreciating each other enough to respect a boundary that may not 100% line up with ours. It's close, I'm sure. It's but those types of values are things that are popping up all the time. I'm really interested, and I know you didn't say anything about this, I did it, but I'm really interested, and I'm kind of pumped about maybe hearing from some of our listeners about their thoughts on values. What are the ones that if you had to do it over again,
Mhm.
you'd say, without question, you don't go into a significant relationship or a marriage without talking about these values.
Yep.
So who
Yeah.
who are you going to call?
Yep.
Where should they send those
Yeah. So
suggestions?
I think in the email that we send out, you can just reply to that. That'll be
Okay.
the easiest thing. But if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it in Spotify or iTunes, I guess it's another one of the many, many, many places that people find us. You can just email information@greaterimpact.org and share that information with us. I
That
think,
was
and
cool. I
I'd
was
like to
just
hear
assertive and it felt good.
what's that?
I was just assertive and it felt good.
Okay, good.
But you're so kind.
Yeah, I think I'd like to hear too what did they do that was really great? There's one thing that, well, no, there's probably more than that, but one of the things I'm really thrilled with that Jim and I did was we decided when we got married that we would save my income and live off of his in the off chance that I changed my mind about having kids because I didn't want any. I didn't value them at the moment. um, and as a result of that, when I stopped working, it was zero financial hit, just nothing,
Mhm.
because we had that planned. And so my guess is there's other couples that have done things like that.
Mhm.
That there's probably some cool things we'll get from listeners where things worked out well. So we'd love to hear that. In the meantime, if you want to connect with Kyle as a counselor, if you live in the big state of Texas, and it is big, everything.
Cold, snowy state of
Yeah,
Texas.
right now it is. Like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us how we get a hold of you, sir.
If you'd like to get a hold of me, how about shooting me an email at kylehargrovelpc@gmail.com.
All right. That's
It's that
awesome.
simple.
Kyle Hargrove LPC@gmail.com. All right. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Be sure to listen to the next episode. It'll give you some tips around conflict and how to build connection in your most significant relationship, your marriage. Thanks for being here today.